Okay, so we are now recording, and I want to welcome you again to the Donor Development webinar. We're going to talk about taking action with your donor development and build a little bit off of what we learned from Ann Nash in our previous webinar. So some of the objectives for this webinar is that we're going to explore some areas for action in donor development. We're going to consider some next steps for the remainder of this calendar year, and we're just going to discuss and learn from one another. So here are a few things that I wanted to remind you about from Ann Nash's donor development webinar that we had. And so one of the things we learned in that webinar is that individual donors are actually a good focus for community foundations. Individuals, they're outright giving. And actually, I'm not sure exactly what she meant by the term outright, but the giving from individuals in community foundations is $309.66 billion a year. So they were the largest segment for giving in the community foundation realm. So remember to also that she shared that everyone is a fundraiser. Your board members are fundraisers, your volunteers, if you've got volunteers that are working with your community foundation, they can be fundraisers, and also staff members, which in this case, we're talking about the staff of the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky who can partner with you in your fundraising efforts. And Nash also said it's important to know your needs, so the community foundation's needs. We're going through those plans with some of the community foundations so far. Upper Cumberland's doing one, Perry County is doing one, and we're expressing in those plans some of the needs and the changes and the things that community foundations want to do in their communities. So if you know your needs and your programs or your sense of direction, that can be helpful when you're talking to your donors. And that planning process we're going through, we hope, will help you with expressing that and creating the message around that. The other thing she shared is to tell stories that can excite your donors. And so if we think about telling stories that can excite your donors, one of the things that you might need to consider is, what are my donors' interests? And so we're going to spend some time talking about how can you determine what your donors' interests might be. So we'll spend some time on that. And the other thing that Ann Nash says is that we just need to understand the ways that donors can give and where to refer them when they choose to give. We're not going to spend a lot of time on those today because we're really going to spend more time thinking about how do we make the ask, what do we do about donor research and things like that. But if you go back and review the webinar by Ann Nash, you'll see that there are ways that people can give if they have real estate, if they have stocks, if they have life insurance policies and those types of things. And so the staff at the Community Foundation, if you have a donor and you're trying to figure out what is a good way that I could talk to them about what they could give, that's where staff could help you with understanding how to help people figure out ways to choose to give that may be beyond cash. So let's think about real quickly donor research. We had a board member who specifically emailed us and said, could you include some donor research information? How do we do donor research? And what do we need to be considering when we do that? And so here's some of what you need to consider as you're doing donor research. First of all, just getting that basic contact information for people, things like their email address, their phone number, their mailing address, and then also figuring out through conversation with them what their preferred communication method is and making note of that somewhere. So keeping notes about how does this person like to be contacted? Do they prefer not to be called and want to be have an in-person visit, or do they prefer to communicate by email? So keeping track of that. Being aware of any past interactions with your community foundation that this potential donor has had. Have they ever served on your board? Have they ever attended your events? Have they ever been maybe in an organization that has received a grant from your community foundation? And what was the last contact that they had with your community foundation, and what was the context of that? And another past interaction that somebody may have had that we've kind of raised out to the top level here is whether they have given any gifts to your community foundation. So somebody needs to be keeping records about that so that you're aware if you're asking this person for their second gift or third gift, and you're aware of what the amount of that gift was in the past, so that you can determine whether or not there might be an opportunity to make that gift a little larger or direct that gift into an area of interest for this person. Then you get into some things that are can require some additional research, and we're going to talk about how to do this research a little bit later. But understanding this person's personal history to understand what is it that they might connect with, what is their career, what is their education level, where did they go to school, where did they go to public school, was it somewhere local, where did they get their higher education if they have a degree, are they a native to your community or are they a transplant, did they move here from somewhere? What are their interests and hobbies? Do they have a family? And if so, what are their children's ages? And so, that could drive the donor's interest in what they're interested in. So, so understanding that kind of personal history information can be important. Also, gathering information on that person's community engagement. What community groups are they involved with? Are they on the board of any specific nonprofit organization that would help you understand what their areas of interest are? Or have they ever run for public office? Are they associated with a specific church? So those kinds of community engagement activities are important to understand about your donor as well. And then we talk about giving capacity. And so this one is a little bit, requires a little bit of judgment and also could include some things that may be a little bit harder to find out. But considering somebody's giving capacity, you might think about things like, do they own real estate? Do they own more than one home? Do they own a business building in the downtown area? So, what forms of real estate do they own? Do they happen to own a boat or a plane or some sort of thing like that indicates that maybe they have a somewhat larger giving capacity possibly? And do they own stock? And so we can't get into the details right now, but in terms of owning the stock, the Securities and Exchange Commission has a way to research public stock ownership. And so, and what I have read about that is that you actually, to do that kind of research often requires bringing in a consultant who knows how to research that. But that may be something that we could explore later, is how do we find out what stock people own and that kind of thing. So, and so if you learn these things, then you can make an informed guess at what somebody might be able to give based on their past giving and also on indicators of wealth. And then we need to think about relationships and associations for the person. What business or social relationships do they have? And then if they have business and social relationships with other people who may be potential donors, then would they be willing to support a request to make a connection for you in that business or social area in which they're connected? So we went through that really quickly, but we are going to take a look now at some research that I did on one of our board members that is on this call. So I thought, can I answer these questions about somebody? So I did some research on Sandi. So Sandi Curd, here's what I found out about you. Of course, now I don't have it listed here, but the basic contact information, email address, phone number, and mailing address, I was able to find, and actually on my next slide, I'm going to tell you where I went to get some of this information. But there's whitepages.com where I could find some of the information about phone numbers and street addresses and things like that. I was able to find, I happened to have Sandi's email address already. Her phone number is listed where, her work phone number is listed where she works as well. So I just did some internet searches about Sandi. And so I asked myself, well, what past interactions do I know about with her community foundation? And so I know personally that she served on the board of the Upper Cumberland Community Foundation. I didn't have the answer to whether there were any gifts that this person has given to the community foundation, but as a board member, I would probably know that, or I could go to the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky and find that out. So here's what I found out about Sandi just through researching some personal history. So I found out her position is that she's the Promise Zone coordinator at Kentucky Highlands Investment Corporation. She has a bachelor's in health science from the University of Kentucky. She has a master's in healthcare administration from the University of Minnesota. She's currently studying leadership at the University of the Cumberlands. She's very interested in agriculture, the farmer's market. She actually describes herself as a farmer in some things that I found online. She has worked with and does consulting with Leadership Tri-County. She owns some dogs. I found that out from her Facebook page. She's married. She actually came here from Nicholasville, Kentucky. She is a person of faith, and I think, and I have a question mark by this, but I think she may be a member of First Baptist Church. Just again, kind of making some assumptions on what I found. She has indicated, based on some Facebook posts that I saw, that she has a great interest in small business, and so in supporting small businesses. And she also has an interest in space science, because I saw several Facebook posts that shared information about space science. And so there are some things about Sandi that I found from internet research. And when we get through this list, I'm going to ask Sandi if we're right about all these things. Community engagement. I was able to find that she is on the board of Leadership Tri-County. She's on the board of the Challenger Learning Center. Aha, there's that connection to space science, maybe. And I'm trying to figure out if Sandi is a Mary Kay representative, because I saw something about Mary Kay on her site, but her giving capacity. So one of the things, it seems to, things that I saw her talking about indicate that she probably at least owns her own home. I could figure that out from that, just from context of some things. Relationships and associations. I'm imagining that she has business relationships through the Kentucky Highlands Investment Corporation, her position with that. She has several personal connections through boards and church affiliations. And I know personally that I would be very comfortable going to Sandi and asking her to make a connection. So Sandi, was there anything in there that you kind of go, that's not right? Or
well, honestly, Donna, it's kind of scary to be that well known on the internet. And so anyhow, you got the church completely right. And my interest in small business is just supporting local downtown. My interest in space science is, in fact, because of the Challenger Center. I'm no longer an active board member on Leadership Tri-County, but I stay connected with them all the time. And in fact, I do sell Mary Kay, mainly just to keep up with my own, need, and so forth. Excuse me for just a moment, though. I see the pizza delivery guy for my husband is looking for me downstairs. I'll be right back.
You go right ahead. So you can see, though, that just by doing some internet research, I was able to find out some things about Sandi that I didn't know, and whether these are useful in, working with her as a potential donor for the community foundation. You just have to ask yourself, where are those interests that she has, and how do I connect to her? So I think we can see several areas that we may connect with Sandi. But let's look real quickly. I want to share with you the resources where, and again, we'll record these, and I'll also send a handout of these slides so you don't have to take notes on all this. You'll get it as a slide. But here's some of the places that I found this information on Sandi. So organization and business websites, and then whitepages.com. And I actually didn't get all creepy and go look up Sandi's address on whitepages.com, but you can do that and find people's addresses for free. Any past interactions with your community foundation, either personal knowledge that you have, or in this case, Upper Cumberland Community Foundation's records would probably have about interactions with Sandi. Any gifts that the person has given in terms of Sandi, again, I would go to the Upper Cumberland Community Foundation or the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky and ask, do we have previous gifts? Personal history, so some of that came from my personal knowledge because I have known Sandi for a long time. I was able to find information on Facebook. I went on to LinkedIn and realized we're not connected. So Sandi, I sent you a connection request.
Yeah, but I am terrible at LinkedIn. Okay. I'm so far behind.
Yeah, and so that's something else you're going to find, is that not everybody keeps all those sites updated, but you can still maybe get some context. Local newspaper articles. I found several newspaper articles. Sandi's position is very public as the Promise Zone coordinator, so there were a lot of newspaper articles around there. Really good bio on her organizational website, so I was able to glean some information from that. I didn't actually go to them, but Sandi was in the TEDx Corbin, and had made a presentation there. And I thought, wouldn't that be interesting to go find that YouTube recording of your TEDx Corbin and really get some insight into your interest through that. Whitepages.com can show names of people associated with the person as well. So when you pull up somebody's record on whitepages.com, it'll show, maybe related to this person, and this person. And so you can kind of get some understanding of that person's other associations that way, mainly family members. Community engagement, again, personal knowledge, Facebook posts. If you're a friend of the person on Facebook, LinkedIn, those local newspaper articles, and again, those bios on the organizational websites were places to find that information. Giving capacity, some personal knowledge. And again, as I said, there are ways to research things like publicly owned stocks. One of the other things I heard is that, and again, this feels, it feels interesting and a little, can feel intrusive, but I think we have to get past that. But if you meet with the person in their home, you might get some sense of lifestyle and that kind of thing. So you can maybe estimate some things about giving capacity based on that. And then relationships and associations, personal knowledge, Facebook, LinkedIn, local newspaper articles. So those, just doing that web search for the person's name can turn up a lot of information. So I'm going to stop there and just say, are there other ways that folks who are on the call have done donor research that I have not listed or talked about here?
Well, Donna, I just want to comment back on has the person ever donated to the community foundation at this particular point? And I will say that, first of all, one, we've all signed confidentiality agreements, which means, but it doesn't necessarily mean that finding out that they've donated is we find out how much, okay? So There's a big difference between, just donating and the how much. And frankly, I don't think we actually need to know the how much, all that much, you know. However, just working with Kathy just this past week and being able to get a master list of all the folks who have donated with our zip codes of the Upper Cumberlands, that puppy was 800 long, 800 different people. And so that's just an easy ask to be able to find from the foundation to find out if they have any engagement. Now, one thing I will say though, is just because they gave to the foundation, we don't know exactly how they did it, okay? So for example, we may be actually surprising people when we go and say, hey, you've donated to us. And they're like, I thought I donated to Wild Whitley. What? I don't know a thing about all this, because we have all these funds and things like that, but that's okay. We just use it I think we can use it as a point of education,
It's to do, and also I think that it's important to find out how, if they're a repeat donor, if they've donated for different causes. I think that's important, not necessarily the amount, but maybe if it's just an individual that's donated $10 like 5 times, so they truly have an interest for what's going on. So I think that's important too.
This is Melissa Vermillion. One of the things, this is not through the foundation, but one of the things that I know is available is that there are donor development software out there, and I have no idea if the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky has that. Yep. But the college does, and we use a product called iWave, the letter I, W-A-V-E, and it provides a lot of information. One of the disadvantages here to this region is that sometimes it makes some assumptions based on giving levels, but the assumptions that it makes sometimes are tied to property values, and that's kind of hit or miss or whatever. But the point is that there are some software out there. Another thing that I have done in the past, and this is not necessarily for the individual, but if you know that an individual is associated with a foundation, now I'm talking about now the large donors, you can go out and look up their 990. Because the 990, and this is for, again, this is not for an individual, but if you know that X individual has a private foundation, and you know the name of that private foundation, The 990 is public, and you can go out there. Usually ProPublica or someplace like that has it available for free. It's not necessarily, you know, the 2019, it might be 2017 or 2018, but I think that's very helpful. And the things that I look for on the 990 is that any gifts over $5,000 have to be listed. Now, sometimes if folks have given so much, they may actually have an attachment, and that attachment may not be a part of the public 990. But if it's not, then sometimes it is. Another thing that's also listed is it'll have the board members of the foundation that they're affiliated with. And so sometimes you can make connections with who those board members might be. So there might be another way in, or, oh, I didn't know that they served. And so that might be another point of contact. But anyhow, that's just something that we also do from time to time.
Good. That's great. Great information. Does anybody else have anything that you have done to do donor research?
A question that I do
Yeah.
have, since Kathy and Bobby are on here, does the foundation have software like what I just mentioned? Do they have a subscription to something like that?
We don't have donor development software. No, we have our traditional software that takes the intake, you know, takes the donations, and we can pull from that. But we may investigate something like that. I'll pass that along to Tanya. And what was the name again? Was it iWave or iWays?
It was the letter I, wave, like an ocean wave.
Wave. Okay.
I wave. Now that's not the only kind. There's lots of others out there, of course. But the point is that I think it just does a whole lot of what Donna's talking about. And it just pulls all that information in, you know, with a couple of clicks, plus more.
And having that repository where people can then go to retrieve this information later, especially as you're building that donor relationship, seems really critical. So that, you know, donors don't get frustrated if people come back and don't remember something they've given in the past, or you accidentally have multiple people contacting the same donor. You know, so I know at Berea College, I think it's very common for universities and colleges to have these donor development programs like this. And so, you know, we have many programs on campus who are approaching donors. And so we have to coordinate our efforts to the development office that way as well, so that we don't have the right hand and the left hand talking to the same donor and, you know, looking like we're not paying attention to what each other's doing. So,
yeah. Right. Yeah, that would be for potential. If they've already donated, then, you know, they're in our system, of course. But if they're a potential donor, then, you know, we wouldn't have that information.
Right.
So
we
Kathy,
have
what do you think?
A short pipeline.
Okay. What do you think would be the best way? So let's say that the Upper Cumberlands identifies somebody. Well, okay, so let's just pretend all of a sudden we figured out that we have an inroad to Mr. Kraft, okay? And so forth. What do you think? And we're like, we're going to go, you know, a couple of us are going to go up to Lexington or wherever he lives, and we're going to go meet with him and see if he wants to invest in that sort of thing. What is the best way for us to not trip over work that the foundation is already doing? What is our process for being able to find out
if we have a relationship, if we currently have a relationship?
Yes.
Well, now Tanya would be able to pull that up on our system. So just email Tanya and say, hey, we're interested in approaching, you know, Johnny Appleseed. Does he have a relationship with the foundation? And she would be able to pull up any type of donation that person individuals made in the past. And just because that individual donated to one doesn't mean that they won't donate it to another cause too, to another fund. Especially if they already have a relationship with the foundation, they could very well be interested in other projects that we have going on, whether it's, you know, an art fund, or, you know, Corbin Art Fund, or it could be the Corbin Cares with the lunches or something. I could see how an individual would be interested in both of those easily.
So this is Melissa, and once again, Donna, I think this question is also directed to Kathy and Bobby again. This idea of these larger donors that we all may have knowledge of, you know, and Joe Craft is a perfect example.
Yeah.
I know that there has been some conversation at the high level of the foundation about not at all limiting access, but doing something such that they don't get 14 different requests.
Yeah.
You know, and isn't it smarter, better, more strategic that instead of getting 14 different requests, that maybe they get one request that is then divvied up between, you know, 14 different, you know, groups or something. So I'm very interested in understanding more about how we as the affiliates are to move forward with major donor development, because one of the things, I mean, because we're talking about donors here now, we talk about, you know, the $25 or the $50 from the folks that are our friends and neighbors and community people, but what about the $75,000 that could come in, or what about the $100,000, or what about the seed money to build a new building or something like that? How do we as the affiliates maneuver that with the foundation as a whole?
Well, first of all, I mean, there again, reach out to Tanya and, you know, kind of explain. Of course, Bobby and I are going to kind of know what's interest of the affiliate, whether it's a building or whether it's a fund or something. So we could kind of touch base with her on that and find out, and then we could kind of work out, you know, like a time to go to meet with them. I don't know if the affiliate would want Jerry or Kristen or myself or Tanya to go with you, but that's always a good partnership. That way they would understand that perhaps this is an affiliate project that's going on. It's not the overarching foundation that's doing this project. It's specifically geared toward that geographic region where the affiliate is located. And so I think that would be the best way to do something like that would be, we would reach out and try to partner and go along so they would understand the whole relationship. Because sometimes it does get a little bit confusing to the donor. So that's the way I would suggest that it could be handled. And, you know, anybody at the foundation would be, you know, would jump at the chance to go with somebody. I mean, it would be a great way to show support for, you know, for how the overarching foundation works.
Yeah.
So then you don't see a problem that if we have 5 or 6 affiliates and we all want to ask money from Joe Craft, that we all go separately?
Well, now that might be a different story. Yeah. Now, if it's each affiliate wanting to try to get a percentage of that, then I think that would be maybe it would be the overarching foundation that would make that and say it's going to be divided between 5 affiliates or 4 or how many ever that might be of interest to that individual. Now, I mean, that's kind of what we do with when we go seek funding from a national funder that we do, and then we channel it through the affiliate. So in a way, I mean, we're already doing that with some of the national funders that Jerry has already made a great relationship with and bring it in, whether it's like EFA, when we did the food security grants, that's how we did that. They weren't looking, they don't have the capacity to divvy up smaller, like $2,000 grants. So they eyed us with the like $100,000 grant, and then we channel that through the affiliates, and they do the due diligence for the smaller grants that gets the grants on the ground. I mean, because the local board knows the local needs. So that's kind of how it's already been working in a way. But that's maybe for the national foundations.
Melissa, I'm like you. I honestly, because there's another thing that we don't, Tanya doesn't have access to information on who's being groomed or who's being related to, you know, that's being introduced to the idea of our foundation, because she's only got the donor part of it. You know, they actually took an action for it. It seems to me that if we identify somebody that we would, you know, we have a relationship that we'd like to reach out to, and let's say, you know, let's go ahead and say Joe Kraft, it seems to me the prudent thing to do is to email everybody up at FAKY and just say, we're thinking about doing this, you know, stop us before we trip over work you're doing, and let's have a strategy meeting. You know, because otherwise, you know, you know, I don't know. I think we would look.
No, I agree with you, Sandy. And I think that's what I was getting at, is that every single one of us, we may not at one time say, okay, let's all go for backpack programs and we're all going to send 14 different requests to Joe Kraft. But we may, over a 18 to 24 month period, all come up with a different project that we think Joe Kraft might be interested in. And here we are hitting from all different directions. And so that's one of the things I've tried to wrap my mind around about the approach that the overarching foundation would like for us to take with these bigger donors that could potentially serve multiple communities. And again, a donor could be a foundation. You know, It may not even be an individual. I know typically we're talking about individuals here, but I just think that what I would like to see, Kathy and Bobby, is for you guys, the overarching foundation is to create some type of guidance that is not prescriptive, that is not telling us you can't do this and you're going to get your hand smacked if you do that, you know, not that kind of thing. But I think that we do need some guidance, and I think that needs to be shared across all the affiliates. So that, you know, because who knows, we may come up with a fantastic idea that all affiliates can get behind.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Melissa, with that more of a regional approach, that somebody has an affinity for several of the regions or several other communities, you know, not just one specific city. So yeah, I think you're exactly right there, Melissa. So yeah.
Well, you know, Bobby had called and was we had a conversation about some deeper follow up on some of the survey questions, and that was kind of my comment to him, is that I really felt like that a regional approach needed to be led by the foundation at large, the larger foundation, because once again, we don't look so scattered. And we don't look like we're coming at it from 25 different directions. If we're talking about some big major ask that could benefit, I think that needs to, you know, we like for things to be a bubble up and from a bottom up, but I think in a situation like that, if we show interest, I think that kind of needs to be a top-down approach for those larger funders. But, you know, again, that's my take on that. So
yeah, well, and two, I mean, the foundation is also building relationships with donors too. So we all kind of have to know. So if that situation arises, then of course, just let us know, and we can say, oh well, so and so has already talked to them at a conference or at you know at a somewhere at you know at a workshop or on a Zoom or something, and they were part of that Zoom and they're very interested in Appalachia. So, you know, we need to work that relationship and build from that and see what their interests are.
Because we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's definitely the key. And Sandy, going back to your question about which one of us at the foundation to email, you know, we all do different roles, so we'll all communicate. So if you just email me or just email Kathy, if we need information that only Tanya has, we're going to go ask Tanya for that information and get back to you anyway. So if you want, you can email everyone at the foundation, and that would probably be the most prudent, because then they could just respond directly. But if you just email one of us, we can also find that information for you. And I think with these big donors, a lot of the times it's just a case by case situation. And so that's the issue in terms of having a guideline, et cetera. You know, maybe we have a really good relationship with someone and we know that they don't mind every single one of our affiliates going to them each year, versus someone else we probably might know that they don't like being spammed with a million requests for funds. So I think that's the biggest thing, communicating with us, because we also don't want to take too much of your authority in asking for funds from large donors. So we're happy to guide, but we also don't want to, Melissa, like you said, tell you this is how it's done. You'll get in trouble if you don't do it this way.
Yeah. Just a cool a broad two-way communication. It seems like it would just serve us so well, because I mean, honestly, if you guys know, hey, Joe Kraft, he'll hear us one time a year. Okay. But you've got this great idea. We want to make sure it's included in this year's ask, and then we can, go from there. We can also, and then we can come up with a donor strategy. It's like if all of a sudden, and Rich is on the phone, let's find out he's his golfing buddy or something, and I'll be like, Rich, next time you're golfing with Joe, mention we're going to be included in this application or something, I mean, those types of things to just show that, by golly, we're not only here raising the level of philanthropy, but shoot, we are organized and coordinated, and we got our act together, because the left hand and the right hand, we all know what we're doing, because it's all for the betterment of Eastern Kentucky, and so anyhow, but there we go.
Yeah. And we have completely derailed Donna.
Yeah,
that is okay. I actually stopped sharing those slides because I felt like it was more important for you all to see each other than to be looking at that slide. But the one that I had pulled up talked about pairing up for the ask. And it sounds like that tool, in the particular situation that you're talking about, figuring out who from which community foundation might approach, which affiliate might approach this donor, but then also really including somebody from the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky, keeps it. I mean, what I researched really is, of course, that it reduces the fear of asking, to have somebody there with you. It also creates accountability to each other in some ways to make the ask, so that, because it's easy to get in there and chicken out probably.
Mm-hmm.
And it improves accuracy of memory, because you don't necessarily want to be taking notes while you're making that ask. That's uncomfortable for the person that you're talking with. But if you have two people there, you're remembering. But also, people are more likely to give if they've got a couple people there talking to them. I think if you brought 3 or 4, that might be over the top. but a couple people seems accurate. And then, the other thing that they talked about in that was that you could use it to cultivate volunteers. If you have a volunteer that works in an area of interest to the person that you're trying to cultivate as a donor, you could bring that volunteer with you as well. So, but that pairing up thing just seemed to be, the idea seemed to fit with what you all are talking about. And I don't want to disrupt the conversation. So, Surekha, you have something.
This is Surekha. I'm a new member. I don't know much about it. This might be a naive question, but let me go ahead and ask anyway. I'm from Floyd County, so I belong to Floyd County Board, which is part of Appalachian Board, right? So let's say as a Floyd Countian, we donate something. Does it go to the Appalachian Fund or does it go to the Floyd County Fund?
You would specify that it would go to the Floyd County Fund. Technically it goes to the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky, but it goes to the fund for Floyd County.
Do they keep part of it? The Appalachian group, do they keep, let's say someone gives you $1,000. If I say, let's say I give $1,000 and I say that I want it to go to only Floyd County.
Right.
So would it come to only our county, or part of it they will keep it?
No, it would all go to Floyd County. It's always donor driven. It's whatever the donor, I mean, if the donor said, I wanted to buy, 20 tricycles or whatever, then we would make sure it bought 20 tricycles. So it's always donor driven. So if you say you want it to go to Floyd County, then it goes to Floyd County. If you say Pike County, Upper Cumberland, then that's where it goes.
Yeah.
Now, there is an administrative fee for the foundation to help with that, but it's very, very nominal.
Yeah.
Certainly worth all of the effort that these guys put into helping us with our fund. But it's a once a year or something.
1%, yeah, it's 1% for the affiliate funds. Yeah, so.
But it's certainly worth it. It's so worth it.
Well, you could get an audit for that much. Yeah. What was that,
My
Shrika?
second question is how many of us are associated with the Appalachian Foundation?
How many there are 12 counties. One is
Oh, yes, sir.
12 counties.
Okay. Okay, all right.
Mhm.
Okay. So I know what area we are talking about now. I
Yeah.
know
Right.
Candies from Cumberland and, things like that.
Right, yes,
And-
yes, yeah.
And Sharika, we're not stopping at 12. There's 54 East Kentucky counties, and until we have 54 affiliates, we ain't stopping.
That's right.
That's
There you
good.
go.
And I will say, in some states, they have a percentage of like their casino tax that go toward their affiliate funds, Sandy.
Okay, let's get a
Get on those legislators.
Time for a riverboat gambling thing on the Cumberland River. I'm there. I'm there.
There you go.
So
There you
that
go.
helps some of the affiliates, as long as they're associated with a nationally accredited affiliate, they're a nationally accredited community foundation fund, then their affiliate qualifies for that. So that's in a couple of different states. I think Iowa and Minnesota, I believe it is. So yeah.
Okay.
All right. Good. So
Bless
We-
your heart.
that's no, it's fine, really. I want to do what's helpful for you all. And so one of the other things that we had prepared was how to handle it if the meeting doesn't go as you expected it. What if the person says no? Would it be helpful if we talk a little bit about that? I mean, there are other slides in here just about, who your prospects might be, community members, board members, staff members, former residents and things like that. But I think you all really have that kind of in your heads already from the donor development webinar with Ann Nash. But what we didn't get into a whole lot there was, we'll start with this real quick, was share.
Oh,
Was like, how do you talk to the person that you're trying to meet? And maybe this is your first time meeting with this donor or this prospective donor. And so what are some open-ended questions that you could ask? So there were some questions that are things like, what are some things that you'd like to change about our community? What are some opportunities that you think our community could build on? What's one of your favorite memories in the community? So these ways to connect them personally. What questions do you have about what the Community Foundation does? And so those types of open-ended questions to start your conversation with them. This is really the cultivation phase. You don't want to go right into asking for a gift. If it's the first time you've met the person, you're really cultivating that relationship. So we'll talk a little bit about, of course, following up if they make a gift, thanking them, making a connection with the foundation staff, which is what we were talking about earlier. I think what we were saying is that connection with the foundation staff actually needs to happen during the cultivation phase as well for some of these larger donors. And then the whole stewardship thing, sending a handwritten card. I'm rushing through these quickly because I want to get to the others. But handwritten card or email within a day, getting back in touch in 2 weeks with them, keeping them in the cultivation stage, or if they haven't given yet, or the stewardship stage if they have given. So even if they give, you want to keep communicating with them, but don't ask with every communication. Part of stewardship is communicating just to keep them updated and keep them interested. So what if a person says no? This is the slide I really wanted to get to. First of all, remember that no may not mean never. So it could be for some reason that they can't give right now. So how do you respond to that? you ask them very gently, okay, well, I understand you're saying you can't give, but can you help me understand why? And so what happens if they give you some of these common excuses that you might hear? The donor says, I'm just not interested in what you're doing. I just don't have an interest in that. And so your response to them is coming back with a very gentle, open-ended question that says, well, can you talk to me about what you do differently, or what we can do differently or better that might increase your interest in giving? So what are you really interested in? And not that we want to make our money, if we have a specific thing we're asking for money for, we don't want to change it, just chase their money, but we may find a connection in that question. The donor might say, well, now's just not a good time. Who knows? They may have had a family member that just had a medical issue or had some sort of problem come up. And so you gently ask them, well, would you mind if I just continue to keep you updated? And when might be a good time that we could talk again? So you always try to strive for that action step. And the action step you're seeking, if they say now is not a good time, is, well, give me a good time that we could follow up again, and try to get that set. The donor might say, oh, I can't give that much. That's more than I can afford to give. But so, maybe you got your ask just a little bit wrong. And so your response could be, we appreciate a gift at any level. So is there an amount that would be more comfortable for you? Understand that if you want to support this, we welcome any gift. The donors then could say, maybe, I don't know if giving to the community foundation is an effective way to use my money. Why can't, and actually the next question too is, why don't I just give directly to the nonprofit organizations? I don't want to give to a middleman that's going to pass the money on. So some of your responses could be, how can I help you understand better about the impact that your dollar can have through our foundation? That could be a little bit more than it might have if you gave it directly to the foundation, And then you may have to say, can I gather some information to share with you? Because you may not have that direct answer immediately, but I'll bet you that there's a way that you can say to them, if you give to the foundation instead of directly to the organization, we can double those dollars, or we can pool money in this way, or we can have more impact because of this. And so those responses to either one of those questions, if they say, I give directly to nonprofit organizations, you might tell them, well, thank you for supporting that work. And we realize that work is important. And again, talk about how maybe giving to the community foundation could leverage their gift. And they can still designate it for that nonprofit. So those are there other asks that people have made that you've had somebody turn you down with a different reason than this that we could talk about now?
Well, most of the time when I'm getting a no, and I think it's a cultural thing here. It's, and I'm not talking about for money. I'm just talking about for anything,
Yeah.
They just avoid it. It's like they won't return your phone call. They won't answer your phone. They won't, they go to the other side of the sidewalk, all this other stuff, I mean, because we are a small knit community, I think a lot of people are just, their no is just no answer at all, because they certainly don't want to offend you. The other observation that I'll share is that I think that if you get in and you make an ask, no matter what figure you come up with, okay, to make for the ask, that the cultural response the person is going to have is going to be, what? How much? Well, that's a lot of money. I mean, it doesn't matter because that's just, I think that's just a culture. I don't know. You all tell me if that's different, but honest to goodness, the impression I get is whether you say, $50 or $5,000, you're going to get that, that, oh my gosh, what do you, that sort of artificial, you must think I'm made out of money look, and if that's the case, and Emily posted that she agrees that that's going to happen no matter what. But if you expect it, it won't shock the living daylights out of you when you get it and you feel like you've done your research wrong.
I think that depending upon the funder, I think that if it is a true philanthropist, I think the no may come in the fact that you did not hit their area of focus. And I'm talking about individuals now. Is I think that a true philanthropist has ideas, And that comes back to what Donna was showing us earlier about understanding what those ideas are, and knowing as much as you can about that person and understanding where their interest lies. That's why I love looking at the 990s of foundations to see where they have given their money previously, so that I can see if I'm on, on even in the right lane, so to speak. So I think that sometimes you can get a no because you didn't understand your audience. And I think it's real important to do that. I definitely agree with what Sandy's saying about just the mom and pops. And when I say mom and pops, I'm talking about mom and pops who have money. Mom and pops who have money that you ask if they are not, if they've not been long-term philanthropists and have been writing, 5-figure checks or 6-figure checks, yeah, the first inclination is going to be, what? How much? And so I wonder sometimes about doing that, is if it's not a joint kind of thing. Is there 2 or 3 people that could be added to that group of maybe 4, for a total of 4 or 5, that could each give some amount, that together collectively they're all sharing the same pain, and they're all kind of commiserating together that they're helping with something, and then possibly establish some type of bond or some type of network or some type of relationship, then that you can kind of go back to that well. But I think that it could be definitely I liked, how did you say it? It was not fake. What did you say when that factor?
Oh, I don't know, that sort of humble, it's like that fake humility that I'm not made out of money, but you really are, but you got to act like you're not, that sort of thing, or so forth. Does anybody think that idea of writing a figure on a piece of paper and turning it upside down and sliding it across the table, does that work in our culture?
I would run from the room, because you are a used car salesman at that point. And I have had that happen to me when buying a car, and it makes me want to irp. I would never do that. I would, now that might be in some other circle, but I could never do that, because I mean, literally, I have seen people do that and buying a car, and I just can't. I could never do that.
Well, and sometimes you have to think about, when you're talking to an individual, you're planting the seed. I mean, they might not get right now, but then later on, if circumstances change, then they've already been approached and they know about the community foundation, and they might leave a bequest. So it's just, sometimes it's more about planting the seed and understanding the good work that all the affiliates and the foundation that's been happening in the region. And they might not give today, but in 10 years they might.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Two of the things,
it's kind of the long game. Yeah, it's one of the long game.
And two of the things I was hoping to also talk about is, what if you run into somebody and they're just like, you people, I give every single year and you act like I've never given before at all. And, if you run into the I guess the bad relationship, where it's like, the past performance has not been up to their par. Okay. Maybe they're one of those individuals who, I never got a thank you note. And, you could have sent it, it got lost in the mail. I mean, who follows up to make sure you got a thank you note? But maybe that's, those types of things. But how do you rebound from that? A bad relationship or a unmet expectation?
I think Donna had a comment on the slide earlier, and I think that it was pretty spot on, that you have a conversation. Now here's the question, is who has that conversation, right? So who was the offender, and is there an offender? And so if there is, then maybe that's not the person that has the conversation. But I do think that the best way, in my opinion, is to hit things head on and to just say, can we have lunch, and can we talk about this? And it appears that we didn't meet your expectation, and how can we do better, and where do we fall short? I think the key to that conversation is, though, who has it with them? Who is the person who is closer to them, I think of things in terms of assets and life, like positives and negatives, and you make deposits, and you build up a balance, but sometimes it just takes one withdrawal to deplete the entire account, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to figure out how can you make a withdrawal without depleting the entire account, and who is it that is in the best position to go back in and to start making deposits again. I think relationships are everything, and so some people are going to be closer than others, but that's just my 42 cents worth, and I'll shut up now.
That's all right.
And then my second thing on this before we run out of time, and we have run out of time, is what if the donor is like, I'll give you your $5,000 that you've asked for, but I am tired of just dropping money into black holes. I expect to see some actual impact for this $5,000 donation. And it is some level of impact that you have absolutely no idea if you could measure or do anything with that. What do you think, guys? I have all these questions for these unhad donor discussions.
I think in terms of a donor like that, a story is always more effective than numbers. So having a story you can pull on and just say, I know you donated to our general fund last year. These are a couple stories that we did with our general fund. These are a few items. But also we can always bring up, if they want to make a large donation, they could do a directive fund, a fund where they have some say so on how the money is spent. And if that's their big issue, that they want to have intent with where it goes to, that's totally workable.
Yeah. Back to the donor intent. So you can have something like that tied to the donation. And it's always good, especially, videos are great. Maybe if we knew that money went to the backpack program, we could get some kids to say, send a video or a thank you or something that way. Videos always are very impactful, and that would be great, I think, for a donor to see how that their money touched that person.
When you're sending them that birthday card, and of course we know you're going to send them a birthday card, that you actually put in a picture or a little snippet, inside the card that said, hey, look at, Annie, who got this, and look at this, look at the new, playground, look at this. I think that constant communication throughout the year, not just when something is complete, not just at the moment that they hand you the check, but if you stay connected with your donors throughout the year and what is happening, and not just that one newsletter one time a year, it's those little personal touches of, oh, they thought about me and they sent me this picture and they were giving me this little update. I think that means a whole lot than just receiving a newsletter once a year. Now, I'm not saying you inundate somebody, 3 times a week, but when they have an anniversary and they have, a birthday, or they're getting ready, whatever. You can figure out what the special occasion is, but just keeping that in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's a full-time job, Melissa. Yeah. I tell you.
Yeah, and so that's the other piece to weigh on this is, as volunteer board members, how do you distribute that work out and really kind of operationalize something that is so relationship based?
Yeah,
can be a challenge probably, but having board members that are maybe responsible for specific major donors, and trying to manage it that way, so it could be.
Well, and those of us that do have it as a high, in our frontal lobe sort of things, we can easily, put an elbow to that board member. Hey, so-and-so was in the newspaper. Did you say something? To be able to help them think that way. But anyhow, it's exciting.
Yeah. Well, so we had, and really I wanted this, I had structured a bunch of slides, but this was really meant to be the kind of conversation that we had today about specific questions that you all had and solutions that people could propose from your own experience. Our next webinar really is scheduled technically for November 24th, but that is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. And so we were kind of going, are people really going to want to meet the Tuesday before Thanksgiving? And so I thought what I would do is do a poll of the people who are here between, to choose a date between November 17th and November 24th. So I will launch that poll, and if folks would answer that real quickly. So you should see that poll now. If you'll pick one of those dates that you feel like would work better for you. I don't know that people are traveling for Thanksgiving with everything that's going on with the pandemic, but yeah. Because you guys are on this call, you get to make the decision.
I just clicked on it.
Excellent.
But suppose both the dates are okay with us, there is not that choice.
Okay. Oh, exactly. Certainly. Certainly. Yes. So looks like I think everybody has responded now. And so it looks like 88% of folks chose November 17th.
Okay.
So
I can do that.
I can share those results. We had one person who said the 24th, but
Well, that was me. Sorry.
oh, okay. Oh,
It was like
okay.
I was like, sure. I was like, both of them are fine. I don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had done it on both, but then the
It won't
first
do it.
time-
It won't let us.
Oh, it won't let you choose both. I see. Oh, gotcha. I didn't think about doing it that way. So, okay. Well, then we're going to have our next meeting on the 17th of November, and we are going to talk about the transfer of wealth in communities, which really relates to how we have had outmigration of younger people whose families may be needing to transfer wealth as older family members pass away, and what happens when that wealth leaves the community if it's not things like real estate or something that's kind of fixed in the community. So how do we talk about that, and what are we losing over this transfer of wealth? So is there anything else you want to say about that real quick, Kathy, before we go for that webinar?
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what we're going to do for November. And with community foundations, you usually talk about capturing 5% of that wealth. So it's not a huge amount, but if you add it up altogether, it could make a huge difference in a community foundation. So there have been a couple studies on the Kentucky transfer of wealth, and we've got those numbers. And it's just good for people to understand what's happening as the wealth is transferring out of our region. And if we can just capture a small percentage of that, it could just be huge. It can make a huge difference.
Can make the difference.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
And I don't think people will really understand, that how it goes through generational changes, and then it's gone. Then it's not in our counties anymore.
Yeah, we can lose that. So, okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining today. Sorry we ran over by a little bit, but I'm hoping that conversation was helpful, and we will have a recording and I'll share the link. So,
All right.
okay. Take care.
Very helpful.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, y'all. Thank you.
Bye.